Recorded live from the heart of the Bakken, it's the Williston Works Podcast.
Welcome to the Williston Works Podcast, brought to you by the City of Williston. Williston Works brings you in-depth discussions with the entrepreneurs, small business owners, and investors who are getting it done in Western North Dakota. I'm your host, Sean Wenko, Executive Director of the Williston Economic Development Office. We've got a great panel scheduled for us today because we're talking about the number one issue that is affecting us, especially in economic development, is the lack of workforce. And I couldn't think of a better, more qualified panel to have here to talk today than the three of you sitting here. We've got Dr. Bernell Hirning, who is with Williston State College, Kristal Schmit, who is the Northwest North Dakota Site Director for the University of Mary, and Paula Lankford. She's the Workforce Center Manager for Job Service of North Dakota. Great to have you guys on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
You know, before we jump into workforce, let's just get a little bit about the background of each of you and you know, how'd you end up in Williston and you know, what's the current state of what you're doing right now? And I'll start with you, Dr. Hirning.
Yeah, roughly 40 years ago, I was a student at UND Williston at the time. And that's where my education career started, 2 degrees from Minot State after that. Spent some time teaching in Turtle Lake, North Dakota and coaching, and then spent almost 20 years on the West Coast in educational administration. And 2 years ago, was fortunate enough to be hired as the president back here at Williston State College, and excited to be back and excited for the opportunities that lie before the college and the region.
Excellent. Kristal Schmit, we have you. We've been talking a lot lately because and I'm sure it's going to come up in this podcast about the University of Mary 2+2 program, but your involvement.
Yes, so I just started with the University of Mary 6 months ago, roughly, and been here in Williston for the last 25 years, so obviously call this place home. And just, excited to be back in the workforce. I was a stay-at-home mom for 8 years, so I'm happy to be back working with the University of Mary.
Well, it's great to have you. Paula, let's talk a little bit. There's nobody coming through your doors asking for workforce, is there?
No, it's been a hot topic ever since I've been in this job, which has been 6 years that I've been with Job Service, 5 of that, the Workforce Center Manager. I do hail from Northwest North Dakota, so I'm kind of a boomeranger and grew up in this area, not exactly Williston, but worked outside the area in counseling. My degree's in clinical psychology, and worked my way back to this area working for Job Service. It's been the most fun career that I've had, and part of that is just the excitement over workforce and the continuous challenge, which is a good challenge. We have lots of jobs and need people to fill it. What could be more fun?
Well, and that's, you know, getting back to in the intro when I was talking, you know, the current state of the workforce. Again, it's probably the number one issue that comes up when we're trying to do business development in this area. I always say that the one thing that is, you know, we always push out is that it's really not just a Western North Dakota or Williston thing. This is a nationwide thing where there is a scramble to try to attract, you know, good workforce to whether their community or their state or their businesses that are out there. I mean, it's just there's just a shortage across the board, and nobody has really kind of figured out that golden ticket on what is the right answer that will solve this problem. But getting into your thoughts of the state of the workforce, and I'll just let you jump in. But you know, where do you think the state of our workforce is right now?
Well, I'll jump in because I was checking out the stats, and usually I look at those month to month, but sometimes just need to take a step back and compare it of where were we a year ago, 5 years ago, that type of thing. But I have great news for you guys today. We are on the uptick for labor force here in Williams County. In the past year, we have gone up 7.5% in our labor force. So that's about 1,700 people more than a year ago. And that is an incredible trend to see. You know, looking at the North Dakota trend, we're up about 1%. So we are doing something right in this last year in saying, how do we let people know we still have great jobs, a great place to live, great place to raise your kids? And we lost a lot of people with the pandemic and people moving, if you will, back home and saying, okay, I'm going to stay here for a while, but we're finding that they are coming back. So we still have more jobs than people to fill them, which is, you know, a problem, but at least we have a few less job openings than last year at this time, about the same amount of people looking. Our unemployment rate is 1.7%, which is lower even than the North Dakota. But I mean, it's not people not wanting to work, just finding those people to bring them back, bring them here for the first time. And we're doing it. So that was exciting news to me to really look at the stats and see how are we doing.
How about on the side of Williston State College? What are we seeing, Dr. Hirning?
Well, if you look at employment as a tree, we have two branches with the faculty side and the staff side. On the faculty side, just some interesting statistics. We recently had an opening for an art instructor. We had almost 40 applicants for that position. But we have an opening for an information technology instructor. We've had 0 applicants. So it depends on the type of discipline you're looking at. And on the staff side, it's a whole different ballgame, because on that side, we really compete with the oil and gas industry. And so we have a situation where we were looking for an HR director. It took 6 months to get one qualified applicant because of the fact that all of the companies doing business here have HR directors. And so we're competing with that. So we're looking at pay. And the college, we obviously can't pay at the level that they're paying in the oil and gas industry. So it's a bit of a struggle in some areas, but in other areas, we have a plethora of applicants. So and it's hard to gauge what it's going to be.
It's a good topic to roll into is starting to prepare for the future, because obviously it starts with it on the educational level. How do you start to prepare, young students to say, hey, there's shortages in these areas, let's go into there. One of the biggest things you've been working on is with Kristal and University of Mary is this 2+2 program. Why don't you explain a bit what that is for us?
Yeah, so basically, the University of Mary is, with this partnership with Williston State College, is going to offer bachelor degrees in business administration, business management, nursing, and elementary education. And so you can just roll right into that bachelor program. And the exciting thing is it's less than $5,000 to receive your bachelor's degree. So through the University of Mary. So
excellent. And I'm going to stay with the education piece. What are we seeing out there with the younger generation now going into college and starting to prepare for the future? And again, we always talk about that. You probably have more than enough of this major. We don't have a lot of this major. Kids aren't seeing this. They're not going into that. Is that trend changing a bit, or what are we doing to try and steer to fill some of the gaps now that we're seeing that?
One of the things we're finding is most recently is the move toward CTE, career technical education. So there's less of an appetite for 2-year degrees for transfer and a much stronger appetite at certificates or workforce training, as Kenley does with Train ND Northwest. So that's really where now the big push is that do you really need a degree for this particular part of the workforce, or do you just need some basic training or a certificate at most? So we're trying to balance between the two and looking at adding some certificate programs and expanding what Train ND is doing, but also not forgetting about the 2-year student that wants to get an associate's degree and transfer, be it to Mary or one of the 4-year institutions in the system. So trying to find the balance between those two and pivot as quickly as we can so that we don't miss out on an opportunity. It's been a challenge, but it's something that I think we're positioned pretty well to meet that challenge.
And let's talk on a timeline. So we're talking about this education of students, talking about 2+2 program, Williston State College. What are we for? If I'm an employer out there, what am I looking at for timeline before we start seeing the results of what we're trying to do here? Are we talking a couple years? Are we talking 4 years? Are we talking 10 years?
It depends on what you're referring to. If you're talking about just simple workforce training, as you know, Train ND can pivot real quickly. They can literally create it in a few days and start delivering it. If you're talking about actual degree programs, then you have the hoops of HLC accreditation that you need to go through and getting the curriculum approved and then connecting it to a 4-year program. So it depends on the area you're looking at. We can move awfully quick, or in other cases, it takes a little bit longer because of the accreditation process that you need to go through to get new programs approved.
Sure.
And I think with that Compass program, hooking the students in, the faster and more robust the companies move to get their information in that system, the more useful it's going to be to the students and the parents and the teachers, helping them find things. And, you can easily have somebody who's going into their senior year this year do a work-based experience during the year because you've plugged into that system and start working for you and be your forever employee, next year. So I think it could happen quite quickly if we move forward and utilize the resources that are there.
We're going to get into straight out the competition for workforce right now. And one thing that I see is that, and I see it, but you always hear the rebuttal quite a bit, is that you see there's always the scramble to get workforce. It's always wages. The wages continue to go up to try to attract somebody that's from, maybe somewhere else, to get them to jump over and da-da-da. But then I also hear that you can't just chase wages, because it's just not a good practice, and it's not something that's going to solve the problem. What are you seeing with your businesses in the job service when they're coming through? What are they doing to stay competitive? Is it just wages, or what else are they doing?
You're right in that wages alone won't fix it. However, the other mentality of, well, just raising wages isn't going to fix it, so we won't raise them, doesn't work either. So it really is that combination of having really competitive wages. Obviously, the ones that retain the best or attract the easiest have the highest wages, have the best wages. But what also comes with that is the culture of the workplace, and that it is geared toward what is meaningful to the employees. And for some of those, they're coming to work, they don't want any time off, they don't want any free time, they're going into a type of occupation where they're expecting to just work long hours and make tons of money. Other occupations and certain industries, even more so, are looking for work-life family balance and some flexibility. I think that has been a huge component, particularly since COVID, to say, you know what, I got used to being able to run my kid to this or that. Can I work that into my day? Can we flex it and I can still get the work done or above getting the work done? And kind of looking at an individual basis of what works. And that can be kind of complicated and time consuming and hard for HR to manage. And so sometimes companies are like, no, we just do it all the same because that's easier. But that's not necessarily easier to attract and retain.
We look at Williston State College, we look at the University of Mary program, and there's tremendous opportunity there. And there's also tremendous opportunity in some of the scholarships that are available through there. And that's such a unique program that's a whole podcast in and of itself, which we'll get into. But if we're talking to the businesses out there, how can they help you guys push what you're offering to the region?
Well, it'll start with the first 2 years at Williston State College. A couple years ago, we expanded this regional scholarship that we have. It was very restrictive and very limited in who qualified for it and what the requirements were. So we changed it to allow 53 counties in western North Dakota and eastern Montana, any graduate at any time in their lifetime from any of those 53 counties in western North Dakota and eastern Montana, they qualify for a full 2 years of tuition and fees paid 100%. So regardless of whether they're going into nursing or English or history, they get full 100% tuition and fees covered through Williston State College to pursue an associate's degree. When they finish that, then with the program that Mary brought to town and the connections that Monsignor Shea has had in terms of making it more affordable for the third and fourth year, you can now, for less than $5,000, complete that bachelor's degree through the University of Mary program. So for employers to know that and to promote that to their employees, they can even do this online. They don't have to do the Williston State College piece in person, which they used to have to do. But we changed that to allow part-time students pursuing an associate's degree, as well as fully online students from Bismarck or Minot or Billings that want to pursue an associate's degree. They can do so from a distance, at least on the 2-year piece, and apply for the scholarship and get the scholarship for that.
Well, and I think what's unique about that too is throwing this out to the businesses is that could be a tremendous opportunity that they could offer as a benefit. Is if you have an employer come and maybe they've got a family member who wants to go to college, you can walk out of there with a bachelor's degree for $5,000 is unheard of. And that, to me, that would be a small perk that would pay huge dividends. So hint to the employers that are listening out there, that might be something that can help attract. Jumping over to, let's talk about job service though. You've got, job seekers coming through the door. What do the employers need to know? that they can help you and they could be more successful in trying to fill their workforce?
Well, the first thing they need to know is super simple. List your job openings with job service. And it's amazing how many don't, for whatever their reasons are. You know, we have it over here, or we had it listed last year, that type of thing. But you're not going to get those positions filled without it being very visible. And the easiest free thing to do is list it with job service. And the more visible, the better. We can also put it on social media. You can put it on social media. Just the visibility of your job opening is key. And the ease for the person to apply helps. Now, it depends on the position. Some of those positions, that they're pretty high-level positions, require a lot of steps and might take you 3 hours to apply. Makes sense. Some of these more entry-level positions is a real turn-off to people if they have to do a 2-hour application to not really even know much about the wages or any of that. They're just not going to apply. So if you can do even like a hey, let's have a conversation step for some of those more entry-level positions, that would be very helpful. But it is helpful to actually come into job service as an employer. And when you come in, not only are you meeting with our business services folks, but our employment advisors, once they talk with you, they may have somebody in mind right there that, hey, they were in here earlier and referred to you. So those relationship building is helpful if you have time to stop in and we can kind of connect the dots. I think that's great. The other thing that I will say is with the challenges that we do have, I would ask that employers take a look at their policies, procedures for hiring, for retaining, for HR, as far as recovery and reentry issues. Oftentimes, companies that have very rigid, nope, we don't handle those problems. If you have any pending issues, we don't even look at you, are the ones that are really screaming, we can't get any help. Where if you can take a look at people who have either pending criminal charges or that they actually have convictions and look at them on a case-by-case basis, an individual basis, versus just a policy that just is red lines it, you're going to be a lot more fruitful. And you'll find that some of the people in recovery and reentry are actually the hardest working, best employees you'll ever have. But if you have very rigid policies that just keep them out, or if you have somebody that's already working for you that stumbles and is struggling with substance abuse or something of that nature, if you don't have a recovery friendly environment for them, or kind of handle it in a nope, you're out policy type of way, then you end up shorthanded and potentially really losing a great candidate or a great employee that you had.
In the next 3 to 5 years, what does the city of Williston look like? Are we going to have our workforce problem solved, or are we still going to be sitting here having the same conversation as we're having right now? Let's start with you, Dr. Hirning.
Yeah, for the college, our biggest action item in the next 3 to 5 years is our healthcare training facility. In the last legislative session, we made a case to the legislature, and we basically had 4 bullet points in our talking points. Number 1, oil and gas is currently flowing at 1.2 to 1.3 million barrels a month in the northwest part of North Dakota. In order for that level to continue to flow, what needs to happen is the population of Williston needs to continue to grow. For that population to continue to grow, healthcare providers need to expand. For healthcare providers to expand, they need a trained workforce, and that's where we come in. And so when we heard that request from Sanford Health coming to town, as well as the other healthcare providers, as I talked to them, wanted to expand, but they couldn't find the workforce to expand, that's when we got to work. And we put together this case to build a 40,000 square foot, 2-story healthcare training facility on our campus and add roughly 10 to 12 new healthcare training programs at the certificate level, associate level, and bachelor's level that's going to provide the trained workforce that healthcare in Northwest North Dakota needs to expand. That's really where we see the big opportunity going forward. And it all adds together. 75% of the revenue in the state of North Dakota comes from this part of the state. I think the legislature understood that, and the legislature supported our ask for some dollars to help with that healthcare training facility. So we're excited to get started with it. We're going to start developing programs before the building is even built so that we can have those programs ready to roll and already creating revenue stream the day that we cut the ribbon and start doing business in that location.
Kristal, what's the goal? Talking about University of Mary, obviously this is, we started the 2+2 program. Is it kind of like this is what it's going to be, or is we going to continue to see more opportunities, more programs probably come in and availability? What will we see over the next 3 to 5 years potentially?
Yeah, well, the University of Mary, I know, is here to stay. And I truly believe that, and what has been said, that there will be some more programs added to this. And again, we want success for Williston State College. That's why the University of Mary came to this community, to support this community and to support Williston State College and equip students to be lifelong employees in this community. I care about this community, and so I'm excited for what this partnership will bring, and we're here to stay.
One question, Paula, is with the job seekers that are coming through your door, or maybe they're looking online at jobsnd.com, what tips would you give the job seeker?
Well, I think sometimes when we have more jobs than people, job seekers tend to get complacent and think, well, it should be easy to find a job, and just throw their resume out, or not even have one, kind of half fill out the application and assume they'll get the job. That's not what's happening, and that's not what these employers are looking for. And so as a job seeker, really looking at your resume, if you aren't really good at resumes, which most people aren't, utilize our free resources or somebody else to help you beef up your resume. Tailor that resume to the job for which you're applying. It takes a few extra minutes, a little extra work, but it's worth it to really show the employer that you're aligned, your qualifications and skills with that particular job. And then they'll take a look at you. And remember, that resume is just to get you the interview. You do need to do a little prep work for that interview. And I think that's oftentimes where people then get even more lackadaisical and think, oh, I know how to talk. But prep for speaking to your skills, talking about an instance where you had conflict and how you resolved it. Get some of those fresh in your mind, if not practiced up, before you go into the interview. And that's going to be much more rewarding than just kind of going on the fly. And really, that's what our services are there for. If you don't even know how to type barely and make a resume, or if you're really skilled at making a resume but you want a second look at it to maybe get some feedback, come to Job Service, and we're happy to help anyone for free.
We want to find more information. Williston State College, where do we go, Dr. Hirning?
WillistonState.edu.
Williston State ED. Short and sweet. There we go.
That's right. You can also call the front desk, 774-4200. And they'll direct you to who you need to talk to, whether it's faculty, whether it's staff, whether it's financial aid. And on our website, there's a request information link toward the bottom of the homepage. So as they go to our website, scroll all the way to the bottom and click on request information, fill out a couple fields, and an advisor will contact you.
Excellent. University of Mary, what do we do for more information on this?
Yeah, so if you want to find me, my number is 701-355-8108. And you can go to the universityofmary.com website and just click on Williston, and you will find all the information there that you need as well.
Paula, job seekers, employers, where do they go?
jobsnd.com.
Well, I want to thank three of you for being on today. Again, workforce is such a huge challenge in economic development. We're not going to tackle it overnight, but just in this conversation, you can see that we're making some huge strides. So thanks again, and I appreciate being on this episode of the podcast.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Thank you for asking.
Thanks, Sean, for bringing forward this important topic.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Williston Works podcast, brought to you by the City of Williston. Please like and subscribe for more interviews, and to learn more about Williston, North Dakota, visit cityofwilliston.com. And special thanks to The Range Sports Bar and Simulators for providing the location to record this episode. Visit therangend.com to learn more. We'll see you next time on the Williston Works podcast.